Banos, who
Correct.
is a CPA and a lawyer.
Yes.
And
I enjoy studying a great deal. So it's part of my educational life.
and I was just commenting to Tom and I were talking about how smart you must have been and still are, that you went to law school and you went to accounting and then you passed your CPA exam,
Right.
and you've been practicing for
Now it's been 15 years as a lawyer and about 20 years as an accountant. So it's look, I worked for the IRS for a little while. Like I figured, you know what, I think lawyering is going to be easier. Little did I know it was going to be more difficult.
So there's lots of money conversations going on now.
That's correct.
So let's talk about the PPP money, because people are really chatting about that.
I know it's so here's the latest thing. So as you know, the government has been fairly gracious this particular year, sending out funds to taxpayers. You got several items that are we have direct payments that went out to a group of taxpayers, who went to every single person who had a Social Security number, who had filed taxes in the past, and that has been modified. And I want to assure everyone, if you did not get your stimulus money this particular year, you can claim it in the tax return for 2020. Okay, but it has been a crazy year for accountants. It has been a crazy year for the IRS. It has been a crazy year for everyone with COVID. But specifically, if this is what you do, it has been fairly challenging. The tax season this particular year will be later, so everyone has to be very patient with your accountant. The electronic filing will not start until February 12th, and that is a welcome respite on my part, because if you are like me, I have over 100 small businesses that I manage. Everyone is asking for the second round of the PPP. And the way that works is, and this was applied to everyone, I think the government sort of get a broad brush last time around, and they tried, and some people who shouldn't have received anything received some money, up to $10 million for some of the firms, and they get it twice. So the government tried to clamp down on that, and they said, if you're going to apply for the second round, show us for real that you have a need. Okay, so you have to have at least 1/4 of the year, and there's 3 months out of the entire year, in which you had more than a 25% reduction on revenue.
25% reduction in revenue.
A 25% reduction on revenues, and for
Any quarter.
Any quarters. But I can tell you from my own experience, clearly the second quarter of 2020 would be the main quarter in which some of this items happen.
So even if their business recovered slightly, right, out of this, let's say the third quarter or the quarter just passed. So even if that was the same, as long as they could demonstrate during the one of those quarters that their business was down for 25%, down 25%, that's the beginning of the hey, you have a chance to get it.
Right. It's sort of, think of it as a prerequisite to even request a loan to begin with. You can use the same amount of information you had in 2019, which is what most taxpayers are doing, or most companies are doing, given the fact that there was such a fluctuation and such a erratic way in which employment and payments were done during 2020. So that we can use 2019 information, which was a more steady flow. Some banks even are using the same information they received in the original PPP loan. And one thing that has a lot of confusion out there, if you have not requested your forgiveness, which is an essential aspect of what needs to happen, if you have not requested it, you can still apply for the second round. Okay. The government's goal here is to really help struggling businesses to move on. I would recommend for everyone to go to your accountants and try to get that forgiveness for the first loan as quickly as possible, because evidently that is that you don't want to have to repay that amount, and there is a limit, because you have to do it within a certain amount of months from the day that it's actually due to be paid. But
so when is that coming up for people that maybe got it in April, May, June?
It'll probably be around August. August and July.
August coming up.
Will be the primary time in which, because it's 10 months from the day that was the before there was. So what happens, and the application has been fairly simplified. Most businesses that got their first run of the PPP, if you got a business, an amount that was less than $50,000, there's an expedited form. They have essentially said, look, if you got less than $50,000, not necessarily in these words, but pretty much you're going to get it forgiven. Okay, there isn't going to be much of an issue. The second round, it's more of an issue. also, if you have a venue like a restaurant or an amphitheater, a place in which people will gather, a place, it's something that the government estimates will be far more affected by COVID or by the pandemic in general, as a way of operating. There's a special rules for those because they can get additional assistance and they can get additional
I mean,
money
like
for
event planners or restaurants.
restaurants, all those folks. So look, there's a real impetus on the part of the government to really assist struggling businesses to keep people afloat. And their businesses have closed. I can tell you for a fact. I have many of my businesses were struggling every day. That the PPP helped, but it didn't really get there. Some of them got those IIDLs loans, and that's what kept them afloat. For some others, because they have poor record keeping on their own, or because they didn't quite meet the particular the particular criteria, or because they were just afraid to engage in more debt, they decided not to take it, and they're suffering those things to this day. So this is the topic for accountants right now. It's become very difficult because the problem with the 25% requirement is that you have to compare the 2020 quarters to 2019 quarters. And it's not like we all did the accounting already, December 31st, 2020, right? You have to actually finish that accounting, and some folks have not done it. So if you are out there and you have a small business, my recommendation is get all your paperwork into your accountant, okay? Make sure that your QuickBooks, if you do your own accounting, is perfect and is as close to be reconciled against the bank statements as possible. Submit that to your bank if you're not using an independent accountant to help you, so that you have enough information. Because what you don't want to do is, come the forgiveness of the second round, you find out, oh, I'm sorry, 24%, not 25%. What's the difference between one quarter and the other? And therefore, you never qualified, and therefore you have to pay this loan back. So make sure you follow those steps, because that's key. And then that's just for small businesses. But the vast majority of folks who are out there are either self-employed or they're just regular salaried wage employees. Those are going to have a rude awakening for this tax season. Okay. The IRS was closed for 6 months, and to have an organization that large, that complicated, closed for that long, has created all sorts of havoc for all sorts of people. A big problem from July all the way to November was that we were getting notices from the service saying, "Oh, you owe taxes." But the people have made their payments. They just were sitting in a trailer, in Huntsville, New York, and nobody had opened the trailer. Same thing, and they were in North Carolina and in Texas. So the issue has been is he's taken this massive bureaucracy a significant time to sort of adjust itself to the reality that they did not work for a long time. Add to that the fact that they had to reorganize to send the first automatic payments that went to folks of the original payment, and now the second one of the $600, which is the only thing they did, has delayed the processing of all systems.
Where I'm a little confused on the second round of PPP, and
Right.
so that's all we'll be referencing now, has that been approved?
Yes,
That's already approved.
that's already
Has
approved.
nothing to do with what's going on.
That has nothing to do with $1.9 billion. $1.9 trillion. It's a new age when we're talking in trillions. This will be the third package the government passes, but it has nothing to do with the new $1.9 trillion stimulus package that the president is trying to move forward. This is essentially what was approved by the government in December, and the second round of PPP is part of that.
Is there a reason why a small business should deal with their bank in particular, versus the bank that they don't deal with for their application?
I would recommend that they use their bank, especially if they use the bank for the original PPP loan, because what's happening is most of the bank is just reusing the same information. Okay, and you can reuse the same information as far as the payroll records and all those documents. So it smooths the process. You don't have to gather the documentation all over again.
So if you got the money in April or May or whatever it was, and so now it's February, that's only 6 or 7, 8 months worth of stuff to catch up on.
I agree with you, but the only problem is, remember, the help was only, COVID was only supposed to happen for 6 weeks, right? It was
Yeah.
only supposed to be or 10
Don't
weeks,
worry.
whatever.
Don't worry. By summer,
Right?
it'll all be
Summer,
good.
everything was going to be fixed. And it was a rude awakening to the government, which is why they had so many changes as it went along. And so what you're seeing is a significant amount of disarray, a significant amount of, catching up to modifications and changes, which is a byproduct of the fact that a lot of this stuff was done on the fly. Honestly.
So you've been in business for a long time. How long in here in Miami? 20 years?
For 20 years altogether. Yeah.
So what? And talking with your clients and other people in the marketplace, what's their general feeling about the future?
If you're in real estate, everyone is superbly happy. Okay. Forget about 1 second about the debate about climate change and sea level rise, which, are challenges that we're going to have here. Real estate is doing extremely well in Miami. Prices are up. That's a byproduct of the fact that there's cheap money out there for purposes, loans are being given out. If you're a mortgage broker, that is an industry that's doing very well. If you have anything to do with any type of business in which people gather, it is doom and gloom out there. And even people who are part of the traditional system that supports folks who have to be out there. So, for example, one of the clients, and I think I mentioned it before, that's suffering the most for me is dry cleaners. I have 3 dry cleaners. Why? This is the first time I've used this particular shirt in the past 3 months. Okay, it's because I'm not going to court as much. Okay, I'm not going out there to venues to eat, to be seen. So what happens is, people don't need dry cleaning as much. And that has come back in as folks are being out there, but they have seen if you were about 25%, they've seen a 50% drop in there.
I tried to support the local dry cleaners as much as possible. Actually, I use several of them because I like to do that. And I can see when I look at the racks,
right?
You go, where is it? All right. So support your local dry cleaners, among other things.
I agree. I have an MRI center that there's also a business, and because nobody went to the MRI center for a long period of time, they also saw their business dried up significantly. And then there's some things that you routinely do just to go see your doctor, your chiropractor, or keep your basic checkup, and people are afraid to go to their doctor, to go to a hospital. So you've seen some of that business, take a hit.
So as we look down the road and in Dade County in particular, I think that in spite of some people having some challenges in getting treatment in advance, we won't use that word, all right? but I think it's moving along very nicely. We have 80% of the eligible people here at the office will have their second one within a week and a half.
That's correct.
It's very encouraging.
Right? I think the future is bright. If I am a firm believer in the resilience of folks of the American spirit. I think a lot of folks, this is what this country is known for essentially picking ourselves on the bootstraps and moving along and doing what we need to do without doing too many excuses. So and we can have debates about that, but certainly that is part of the American story. So I think the future is brighter and the future is better, and I think that's the overarching impression from my clients, that this is just a hiccup. And you see that in the stock market, and you see that overall. This is the first time that I've seen a recession in which the recession did happen. It was there. It was a significant modification of what ultimately occurred in the market, but it rebounded fairly quickly.
There's a very famous photograph of in New York City, Times Square, where the soldier's kissing his girlfriend.
Right.
All right,
correct.
There's going to be dancing in the street come whatever month that is. All right.
Oh, you need to understand.
We are all waiting.
I have my Hawaii vacation booked. Okay, I am going to see Kauai for the first time on the beautiful beaches at the end of the year. You see a lot of pent up demand for that, and we are one of the primary destinations for tourism. And I can tell you that is, you see the bookings. I sit on the Bayfront Park Trust, and we're seeing events being planned for the beginning of the last year and the ones
So
after.
anybody that's been through a natural disaster that got government help or help from insurance companies, we all suffered the trauma of Hurricane Andrew, and then when you realize you got over it, and then the money from the government or the insurance company, and then everybody got happy.
Because
I think we're in that genre now.
I think the new Treasury Secretary specifically said that the anticipation is that the economy will go back to its pre-COVID position sometime in the middle of the year. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody who was terminated or who are suffering today, because I'm painting an overly rosy picture. There's suffering out there. I can tell you from my own clients, one talking about taxes. A lot of folks are not going to see refunds this year, okay? Only because they just didn't pay into the system enough to justify getting a refund. So that's going to be a rude awakening for a lot of taxpayers who are expecting it.
And I think a lot of businesses, ourselves included, where you say, okay, what changes have you made, adjustments have you made so you can get through this? I used to sail a little bit, all right? And I remember the time that the rudder broke off, not the tiller, the rudder at the water level. And then I was talking, then I go, what are we going to do? He says, well, what we're going to do is we're going to use the sails as our steering, rather than the combination of that. Meanwhile, you're going like this and it's out in the water. And that's what we have to do as people. We have to make those
as Cubans, we would say, hay que resolver. We have to innovate. We have to do something to get things going. And I think that's what you've seen folks do in this trying times. There's the problem with businesses is that there's a level of overhead and fixed costs that cannot be taken down. Okay. Leaders when they close down the businesses, and I can fully understand what is being done, why it's being done, and the need to make sure that this virus is contained. I'm not putting that down. I think that was a right decision to be made in many occasions, but the leases are still having to be paid every month. The tax liabilities are still there. The electricity is still there.
Since you brought that up, so let's say you own some property, some apartments, and the tenants have not paid.
Right.
And so, oh yeah. All right, folks. All right, hold on. Here we go.
Dad's paying me.
Dad's
paying me.
Oh, is that your stimulus money?
Is that a tax write-off?
It is. I have no idea what it is for, but I guess it is.
So you have folks who can't pay the rent. All right. So the landlord who could have mortgages and taxes, and insurance, and those things, is there going to be a corresponding relief for them, or do they just for the landlords, or are they just going to have to suck it up?
I think there was at the very inception of this, and to this day, the lenders, I think they were far more proactive than they were 10 years ago, or almost a little over 10 years ago when we had the crisis happen. They had already gone through forbearances and delays and modifications. So they had a playbook by which to go ahead and assist folks. And I think that's what they have done. I think to their credit, that has assisted a lot of folks. I think what you're going to see is a lot of that debt is going to go at the end of those loans, and folks are just going to have to suck it up and figure out how those payments are going to be made. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of pain if you're especially elderly folks whose livelihood depends on renters, because a lot of them are paying, but a lot of them are not. And you can go to the courthouse, and even after all the forbearances that were given and some assistance that came from some of the cities, the city of Miami gave some money, and I think the federal government is also coming in and giving some money. The county is not actually effectuating any evictions today. So even if you have the judgment and you have a writ of possession, they're not going to actually have anybody removed. Now, there are logical reasons for doing that, but I think there's a missing connection with a lot of elderly folks who depend on that income who are not receiving it. So there's a yin and yang between what do you do between helping folks that have to be there, and then making sure that those investors don't lose the property and they can continue to live. And so that's where we are. I think, as I said, it is a tale of two cities. You have folks who are very, very happy and who are doing very well, and you have folks who are just miserable.
So we look at the home improvement business. It was way up. And anytime a home is sold, when you think about all the people that are transferring money, right? So you have the guy that buys it. He's paid his attorney, the title company, the mortgage fees. He's paid the movers, and of course, the furniture, and landscaper, and all those things. So when there's a big sale, all right, it all trickles down. All right,
I agree.
And
there's a multiplier effect to that particular, to that one activity, and that's why even having something. That's why the pandemic was so detrimental as an economic effect in March of last year, because any event, any gala, any activity in which folks gather has that same multiplier effect, because you have waiters, you have people who sell the food, you have people who give the transportation, you have the venue itself, you have everybody who buys a dress, who gets makeup. All those folks were not being paid, were not being compensated. There's some of that back. We're not there yet.
So Javier, we have a couple more minutes left. And one of the things I really want to know from people, what are some of the things that they've learned during this last almost year, almost pretty much the last year? So what have you learned?
I think the most shocking thing for folks who are in an office environment, how efficient we can be by working at home. I think that has been the biggest awakening. I think somebody told me the other day that Ryder may actually have most of the folks continue to work from home because the productivity is up 20%. Folks like to have breakfast with their kids, take them to school, and then they go back to work, and they have to be more efficient because now they're juggling other things. But there's no more time them going on the road and all those things. And everyone was so afraid that everyone was going to slouch at home and not do anything and watch TV. And we found completely the opposite, that you're actually far more productive when that happens. I think that's the biggest, that will be the large story, one of the large story for businesses coming in from 2020. And the second thing is just the basic resilience of everyone, that, how much we can really expect from ourselves and how much we can do in the worst of circumstances. I think I treat this as if it almost was like a hurricane in Miami. We know how to, get ourselves back up and continue to move forward. I think this is the same thing, but on a national scale.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. And there's so many more people that are more hopeful about their lives and about their families' lives and about their kids, and looking forward to the tomorrows that are going to be better. And one of the things that we learned is we have some people that are working from home, and it's the same thing that they do each week. And I got to tell you, I'm not sure that I would even ask them to come back. All right, if they live more than a couple minutes away, it's like, why would I want them to come back? They would have. One of them was spending 45 minutes each direction, so an hour and a half a day. All right.
To answer you, to give you the other side of that coin. Well, traditionally the way we obtain advancement, maybe not in a small business, but certainly in a larger structure in which that advancement is done, is by having those water cooler moments. So having the relationship with the boss, having the ability to demonstrate. So if you're not there, face to face with the decision makers, and they don't, it's a little more difficult to create a personal relationship. Right. And just be able to rise in the structure. So, there's got to be a middle ground. I think there's some folks who love this, some folks who hate it. But I think more than anything else, the story, the takeaway, is that it's not the boogeyman we all thought it was going to be. It's not going to be the problem. It's actually a plus, not a negative.
It's an incredible transformation that most of us have gone through. And some of it's going to last for a long time, some maybe forever, and some maybe for a short period of time. But when last March you said, maybe, where's Rip Van Winkle? Maybe I'll just go to sleep and wake up and it'll be over.
Right.
I'll tell you one thing, though. We've learned so much about ourselves and about humankind and about what's inside and what we have to share and what we are as a community and as a nation. And even in our orbit, we see the goodness that people have.
And look, there's nothing to shy away from struggle, right? I don't think anybody was looking for this. Like, we don't need this much of a challenge. But the struggle really illustrates the true character of human beings. And this has, if anything else, has illustrated what the true character of Americans and our resilience. So I think ultimately the story will be, besides the sad story of clearly 500,000 people who have died, but I think the overarching perspective will be that we actually came together as a nation. and as a nation, and we're able to overcome what is one of the most trying things I think anyone has seen in our lifetimes.
I have goosebumps on that. That's a good way to clock us out of here.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure to get our guest today is Javier Banos, CPA and a local attorney. And Javier, thank you very much. Tommy, thank you very much. And again, this is Live with Miami's Community News. Folks,
Appreciate
have a great
it,
day.
folks.